Hello, my dear students. We will be beginning with chapter 19, Nature and Scope of Foreign Trade. The first topic under this is meaning of international trade. Now, foreign trade, as we all know, it is the trade between foreign countries. It means buying and selling of goods from one country and from another country. It is also known as international trade because, of course, it crosses the trans-boundary. It crosses the international borders of the countries in order to import, export, and entry port. In fact, that leads us to the three different kinds of foreign trade that we are going to study. Import trade, as we all know, it is buying from some other foreign country. Export trade, that is selling to some other foreign country. And entry port trade is a new term for you, though we will be discussing it in the class. But as of now, I would like to mention that entry port trade is when a country buys from a particular country in order to sell it to somebody else, right? Next, we come to the characteristics of international trade. Now, of course, territorial specialization, because all countries will have their own set of resources, whether man-made, whether natural. So it is about territorial specialization of resources. International competition, because you're dealing with all the different countries that are trying to sell. Your competition is of an international level. Buyers and sellers, they are separated. I mean, from the same country you can buy or you can sell to, but then you will be regarded as an importer and exporter for the particular line of trade that you're practicing. It involves long chain of agents, middlemen, deals in mutually accepted currency, because every country has got their own currency. International set of rules and regulations are followed because every country has to comply before we go into trade relations. Government control is very much there in all respects, and of course it requires many documents and official work. The differences between international trade and internal trade, or internal trade and external trade, of course, starting from geographical limits or transport, currency, how to make payments, all these are various factors upon which there are so many differences in between home trade and international trade. If you have noticed in my explanation, I've used terms like home trade, international trade, external trade. Now, these are synonymous terms of the same thing that we are going to read through in the entire chapter. Like, of course, license many a times is not required for home trade, but very much for the international trade. Same goes for rules and regulations and other documents. Degree of risk, of course, in international trade, it is much more than in home trade. Number of middlemen are more involved rather than in the home trade. Political relations need to be maintained well, because only then will you be allowed to enter the other country for your economic purposes. Next topic, which is about basis of foreign trade, there is a theory that we have to discuss, and this will be taking up in elaboration in class, because this really requires a lot of brainstorming discussion and a lot of analytical discussions on this, right? So as of now, you could just be told about the fact that the basis of foreign trade is theory of competitive cost advantage, and this theory will be taking up in the class. Of course, international trade has got many problems, like distance is definitely one factor. Not all country people can reach all various countries at the same time. Different languages are used. You have to understand what is going on. Transportation, communication can face hindrances. There is a lot of risk in transit, because the goods, they travel miles and miles. Lack of information and foreign businessmen, that is also another problem. Import and export restrictions are imposed by many countries. Lots of documentation. There can be problems in payment also, because mutual currency is required. Mode of payment needs to be mutualized. Frequent market changes, staying at a distance, you cannot or you're not being able to guess about the demand and supply changes in the international market. That could be a hindrance. Investment for a longer period of time, because a lot of money is required. Intense competition is very much in use. Now, in spite of these problems, there are certain advantages of international trade, like geographical specialization. It is specialized in one area. People try and use more and more natural resources of a particular place. Economic development, it leads to, because it earns foreign currency. Of course, if it is earning foreign currency, then high standard of living, opportunity for more employment for the commoners, enjoying the advantages of large scale business, security against various natural disasters, because all the the international bodies are there to support you. Then of course there is an overall worldwide brotherhood, a good relationship amongst countries that help people to correspond with each other at ease. International prices are stabilized most of the times, and of course that develops the transportation and communication also. Disadvantages of international trade. Now of course because we have certain problems, of course, that leads to disadvantages, like you become economically dependent for various resources that you try and import, or maybe to some extent for export also, because you're dependent on foreign currency. It leads to not so much of development in home industries, because you start depending on foreign commodities more and more. Exploitation of natural resources. There could be a lot of political interference. The country whose political powers are very strong, they may try and influence and dictate terms to not so strong countries, or not so advanced countries and political parties of the other countries. There could be rivalry amongst nation, and you may also lead to that may also lead to the transaction of harmful goods, not so healthy goods for the commoners of the other country, and there can be invasion of culture also. So these are the comparative advantages and disadvantages of foreign trade. There are many middlemen involved. Like for exporting country, there's an export agent who acts on behalf of the he receives the indents from the foreign buyers. Forwarding agent, he's a person appointed by the exporter in order to carry out responsibilities on his behalf, because of course the exporter cannot reach everywhere. Shipping companies are there which carry on the transport, because shipping will be very important feature in order to transport the goods. Importing country, there's an import agent, like what the export agent does for the exporter from the foreign buyers, import agent does for the importer from the foreign sellers. Clearing agent, he is the representative in place of the importer. There are so many documents used in international trade, like indent, bill of lading, bill of sale, doc challan. Then you've got maids received, shipping order, shipping bill. Not to worry, because the next chapter that we are going to take up is documents of international trade, and there will be studying about all these things in detail. Then we have balance of payment and balance of trade, like that theory that I just told you, that we'll be discussing in detail in the class. Balance of payment and balance of trade also we'll be taking in class, because that also requires a lot of technical issues to be discussed. Types of price quotations, there are various types of prices: loco price, FOR, FAS, FOB. You will find these are somewhat related. Like loco price is about when goods plus a normal profit margin is kept. FOR is free on rail, FAS is free alongside ship, then free on board, cost and freight. So all these things are borne by the seller, in most of the times when international trade is done. We'll be also studying about 5 different modes of payment in foreign trade, like open account, direct remittance. Now all these are technical issues and documentation involved. So of course we'll be taking up in detail, along with the flow charts and the quotation and the specimens. Those are given in the class itself, right? So that's about foreign trade. And the next topic after this that we would take up in our next discussion would be documents used in foreign trade. So that will give you a much more clearer picture, right? Okay, thank you everyone.